Welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. Today we're going to talk about my Tuskgor Chariot, which I pulled together from a range of various sources, as well as some of its furry friends, and even a couple of horny friends, if you know what I mean. Now you might have thought from the old Disney film out there that warthogs are just good-natured and musical, but look at those eyes. The glint in those murderous warthog eyes. So I pulled together bits from all the 4 elements of our wargaming hobby: wood, 3D printed resin, plastic, and metal.
And so I give you the Pumba-mobile. And let's identify any particularly interesting features that leap out. So, the most obvious and pressing thing for anyone coming into contact with a Pumba-mobile are the 2 giant warthogs. What's fantastic is that they fit quite neatly and nicely under the harness over here. Now, with all of the 90s Games Workshop chariots, they don't really go to town in kind of putting chains around and showing how they really would have actually kept these animals from just legging it off, because obviously it requires a bit of leap of imagination to think that this is actually holding on to these warthogs at all. The other thing just to share is I thought with this less would be more. So I had all manner of ideas about putting scythes over here and putting some kind of giant battering ram thing over here, which would be quite interesting. But then it occurred to me, why create more work for yourself when, a management consultant would tell you as a process efficiency, being smashed to death by these 2 is basically, the unique selling point of this product. You don't need all manner of other injury-causing items that don't really have any actual effect. You might ask why there are some little books over here and over here with, Sigmarite insignia. And that's because, and this will sound mad, the reason I bought this Tuskgor Chariot many, many moons ago, maybe a decade ago, was not actually to be part of a Beastman faction, the Beasts of Chaos faction. In actual fact, I was using it as a kind of I've forgotten what it was called, not like the Archdeacon of Sigmar. There was some kind of priest who could have like a giant griffin up here, and it was drawn by horses, and this priest kind of could cast sort of spells in an empire army, and I kind of converted this, and I had like a little stand where the priest could sort of read off from a book. I had some giant flag of Sigmar with a kind of, it wasn't the griffin of Sigmar, but it was something close, and I had 2 kind of horses with plumes, but it never looked convincing. And then they released an actual model for it, and so I then stripped it down, and this sat in the lead pile for a decade with nothing to do until I went through my more recent chariot phase. But actually now, you might say, if you ask the Beastman over here, what are these for? He'd say, sometimes he needs to relieve himself, and what better resource to use as loo roll than the prayers of Sigmar. One thing I also always found quite entertaining about this model was just the haughty look on the Ungor rider. He's like, yep, I've got this job. Gives me status and everything. Got my stick, got my whip. And yes, I know I didn't kind of undercoat it properly, but the reason I actually undercoated it was for this video, because things painted black for whatever reason, well, I suppose they don't kind of, I don't know the science of it, but they don't emit any light, so you can't actually see what's going on at all. So I wasn't too fussed about doing a solid job. That spear is just taken from the Ungor sprue, and you didn't need any conversion at all. It just stuck on perfectly nicely onto this silver dude. If I make any more of these Ungor chariots, I think I'll just use some of the old Ungors which I have, their legs kind of splayed and just kind of make them stand all Celtic like, you know, doing fun tricks on the front of the chariot. And that head over there is from the original Tuskgor sprue. Let's get a slightly closer look at that. I mean, the quality of the plastics on there weren't fantastic, but there are some bits that have been very useful. And I ended up with about half a dozen of these heads, and they've been great for all manner of things over the years. And that didn't require any clever conversion. I just stuck it on, as you can see over here. Let's get that in focus. Yes. And there you go. And that's an Ungor from, that's 3D printed from the Avatars of War Patreon. And more on that later. But let's put that to one side, because I thought this would be a great opportunity to show you what else I've got. Because you see, what actually happened was, way back in Warhammer 7th edition, I bought various plastics for a Beastman faction. But then I kind of, I played a game, they didn't do that well, and I thought, you know what, I'll just get rid of these. I haven't painted them, I haven't invested too much time in them. But I did keep back some. And now, it's not like a main project, but, you know, I've got this thread on Led Adventure Forum where I kind of swap things that I don't really want. And so I've got a wants list. And actually, over the years, bit by bit, you know, you do pick up, you know, items that together can make an army. I don't think I would necessarily do it for Age of Sigmar, which I think is now too much brain burn for me. But there are all manner of miniatures agnostic rules where you could have a lovely little Beastman army, and there's loads of fun monsters and stuff you can pack into it. So I have been collecting bits and pieces over the years. They come up on sale or through swaps, and so let's go what I've got. And of course there are 3D options, because I happen to be a subscriber to the Avatars of War Patreon. So let's see what I've got from that. I mean, this is just a pile of bits, but you can see this is the end product of one of them. And so these are some examples of the bits.
Here's an STL of the bits.
So these aren't all the bits, but what have we got, just to give you a sense of it. So you get a body, right arms and left arms. This fellow exercising a bit of leadership. There's a range of nice heads. You have to cut little bits off sometimes with 3D printed. I mean, I do wonder if these are compatible with the GW plastics to some degree. I mean, they may be. That's obviously a drummer boy. I mean, the shields are fantastic on the Games Workshop miniatures, and these shields are fantastic too. Anyway, I guess that gives you a bit of a flavour. Bit of a banner over there. There you go. And then what else have we got? Let's move that bundle of effectively Lego to the side. Now, one figure I knew not to get rid of, because it was always fantastic and I thought I would always find a use, is this entertainingly named Shaggoth, if you use British English, which is some kind of half lizard and half beastman kind of character, with some little woodland sprites sitting in his hair, having a little bit of a frolic. He had these tiddly little horns which kept falling off, and so one day, you know, I thought, like the spam emails, I would give him a bit of enhancement. Or I don't know how plausible it is. Maybe I make them gold or something, because that's obviously his natural horn with a couple of rings, and I don't know how realistic it looks that suddenly the horn becomes squared out, because I got this from an Ogre More Tribe sprue. But maybe I just make them kind of like golden caps. That might make them a bit more realistic looking. and account for their very different shape. Or I could just, I think if I just paint it normally and naturally, maybe it will kind of look okay once it's all painted bone colour, because I think actually this original horn is broader than it looks, and it's just the fact that this was undercoated black and then over sprayed white, which makes it look over here that it stops over there, but actually it's quite wide. So maybe that will work out. And I mean, he is, even in the days of metal, pretty heavy. And basically, I think if you lose your game, you can always just club your opponent to death. He's that heavy. Let's see what else we've got. We've got a Doombull, which is just some giant Minotaur made by another manufacturer, I believe Zealot Miniatures. I mean, this is one of those where a real pro would have told you, you know, you spray it and then you paint it and then you stick these over and you paint those kind of back guards or whatever they're called, because getting into those crevices will be a real pain. But the thing is, I tend to play with stuff a lot more before I paint it. Did I put this dude's foot on the rock, or did he come with the rock? No, I reckon he came with that rock. I know people always joke about foot on rock syndrome, and I've thought about it quite deeply, and it occurs to me, you know, when you go for a walk in the woods, do you just find a rock and stand on it, or do you walk around the rock? I tend to walk around the rock. So I don't know why in the world of fantasy people just are drawn strangely to rocks. Anyway, you don't want to get hit by that. That's the biggest axe head I've ever seen. And he's a pretty big fellow, even compared to the Shaggoth, though not bigger than it. And let's keep going. What else? Ah, the Balefire Taurus. So this is something I swapped for. Oddly Adventure Forum. And he is humongous. And very characterful. And he's some kind of ongoing spell. So I suppose he'd be some kind of demon bull. You've heard of a papal bull? This is a demon bull.
Though maybe he reminds me more of that charging bull on Wall Street, Games Workshop, in its ever longing quest for a bull market.
Maybe he could have a race with the chariot. I wonder who'd win. There's not vast amounts more here. Again, another little fellow I knew not to get rid of because he was so characterful. This is a metal miniature. He was some kind of weird, unusual beastman, wizard, who sprouted a pair of giant black wings. But I mean, even his staff here, his wizard-like staff, is a character in its own right. I mean, am I right in thinking it's got the entire body of some kind of priest of Sigmar on it? He's kept the hammer. He's kept, I don't know what that is, a beer drinking mug, a goblet, maybe from someone from Bretonia. And then he has all manner of shamanic bits and bobs on his tum-tum. So, wizard, sorted. I thought about putting him on a Tuskgor Chariot once, but I mean, first of all, he's got a pair of wings, and so he can fly. And second of all, he's too big. Unfortunately, I don't have too many infantry left, but these are little Ungors with their bows and arrows, running through the forest like Robin Hood riding through the glen, albeit on their little feet. And I've always thought they're great little models. And as you can see, the ubiquitous demonic head, maybe it's a species and they just, this tribe has hunted them down and are showing off what great warriors they are by plonking them head on spike everywhere they can. There's a kind of elite plastic Games Workshop set of gauze, and I always just loved the gauze. I wasn't too sure about the elite ones, but again, I'll see if I can get a few of those. over time. And then, you know, I report on my failures as well as things I do right on this channel. And I had this Chaos Warriors chariot of old sitting about. You can't really see it because it's black, as I mentioned before. And I thought maybe I could use some of these giant warthogs for it. But then when they came, they didn't quite fit. And bending the metal into shape just won't work. I think it will look distorted. So that didn't quite work out. But then I saw that I do have some of these giant wolves from Nightmare Miniatures, and they do fit. Albeit conceptually, one might think, is that not a bit of a heavy chariot for them to be pulling as basically giant huskies? But you know what, so what? What else am I going to do? And you know, I think it might work. Let's have a look. I'd have to find someone probably facing forward as well. I don't know, it does look slightly ridiculous. Open to thoughts, do share. The other thing is that one of the wolves has lost his tail, which means I'd have to green stuff sculpt him, which I don't think is that hard. I think I'd just screw a hole into his bum, stick a paper clip into it, and then sculpt with green stuff another little tail. And then, you know, Santa Claus will be coming to town with giant wolves and a giant battering ram.
On the subject of which, I couldn't help but notice the other day that Games Workshop seems to be releasing a new Beasts of Chaos battle tome. Maybe the faction is now playable. And I think for now, that's enough for today. Goodbye from me, and goodbye from Shaggy the Shaggoth. Please do like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day or evening wherever you are.